Welcome back to Pop Flashback. I'm your host, Rick Smalls.
And I'm Tina Boucher.
And today we're going deep on The Dark Knight, 2008.
You know, it's really considered like a turning point in how superhero movies are made.
Yeah, for sure. For anyone who maybe needs a quick refresher, Batman Lieutenant Gordon and Harvey Dent are all working to take down Gotham's crime rings.
But of course, you got the Joker who shows up and kind of throws everything into chaos and, really pushes Batman to his absolute limits.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the story that people were talking about. I mean, The Dark Knight was a massive success.
Huge box office hit.
Critically acclaimed.
It was actually the very first superhero movie to make over $1 billion worldwide, and it was the highest grossing film for the whole year it came out.
Yeah, it was a phenomenon. I mean, everybody was talking about it, and it's still considered one of the best comic book movies out there.
One of the best ever.
And I think a big part of that is because it went beyond the typical things you expect in a superhero film.
It did, for sure.
The tropes?
Yeah, it really leaned into this realism and crime drama vibe in a way that I think a lot of superhero movies hadn't really done before.
Yeah, it's like a crime epic, but with Batman right at the center of it.
Yeah, and there's obvious inspiration, I think, from classic crime films like The Godfather or Heat.
Oh yeah, totally. I can see it.
It's in the way the story unfolds and the whole tone of the movie.
I mean, you can see it right from the start, like with that bank heist scene.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so meticulously planned.
Yes.
You see just how cunning the Joker is.
Yeah.
And how ruthless he can be right from the get-go.
And it's not your typical, superhero action sequence, right? It's gritty, it's suspenseful.
Yeah, it's got that crime thriller feel.
Exactly.
And that realism, it goes beyond just the action. It carries over to the characters, too.
Yeah.
These aren't just your typical good guys and bad guys,
Yeah.
They're complex people with their own motivations, their own flaws.
I mean, and speaking of complex characters, we have to talk about Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Absolutely legendary performance.
There was a lot of doubt when he was first cast.
Yeah, people were skeptical.
But he just completely blew everyone away.
He was chilling.
Yeah.
It was like he transformed himself for the role,
Totally.
I remember reading about how he isolated himself, like he went into this deep dive. He even kept a Joker diary.
Oh, wow.
Just to get into the character's head.
That's method acting for you.
And you could see that dedication on screen,
Oh, yeah.
He won a posthumous Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, which was actually the first time a comic book movie performance had ever won an Oscar.
That's incredible.
It's a pretty big deal. And, his portrayal of the Joker, it really set a new standard for movie villains.
Yeah.
I mean, his performance is still so influential today.
For sure.
Yeah.
What makes Ledger's Joker so fascinating, I think, is that he's not just a villain, he's chaos personified.
Yeah, he's a force of nature.
He exposes all the cracks in society, and pushes Batman to confront his own inner darkness.
Yeah, it's like he's holding up a mirror to Gotham and forcing everyone to see the ugly truth about themselves.
Absolutely.
And that adds this whole other layer to the film.
For sure.
It's not just good versus evil anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah?
And The Dark Knight doesn't shy away from these complex themes at all.
No, it doesn't.
You've got the escalation of violence, the moral dilemmas that Batman's facing, the downfall of Harvey Dent, who starts as the symbol of hope and ends up corrupted and twisted.
It's heavy stuff, and it's something that I think resonated with a lot of people.
For sure. It's these themes that have really made the film so impactful and enduring,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's maybe take a closer look at how the film handles that concept of escalating violence, because that feels particularly relevant today.
It really does. The film shows how Batman's efforts to stop crime actually end up provoking a much stronger response from the criminal world.
Yeah.
The Joker in particular, he escalates the violence and forces Batman to question whether his methods are actually working.
Yeah, like, is he making things worse?
Exactly.
And you see that in the way the Joker targets the people closest to Batman, like Rachel and Harvey.
Right. He's pushing Batman to the edge, trying to break him.
Exactly. And it makes you think, right?
Yeah.
Does fighting violence with violence just create more chaos in the end?
It's a huge dilemma.
Yeah.
And it's at the heart of Batman's struggle, and I think it's something that we as the audience have to think about, too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's that willingness to tackle these tough questions that really sets The Dark Knight apart.
Sure.
It's not just popcorn entertainment.
It's a film that makes you think.
It makes you question things.
Absolutely.
It's a commentary on justice and morality and the choices that we make when we're faced with darkness.
It challenges us to think about our own values,
Yeah.
and how we would react in these situations.
Yeah, would we do the right thing even when it's hard?
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of why the film is so powerful and why it stayed with people for so long.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's really interesting how the movie takes these characters that everybody knows from comic books and puts them in this world that feels so real.
Yeah, it makes the whole thing so much more gripping.
Yeah, and it makes you think about the consequences of their actions in a different way, too.
It does, and you can't really talk about the realism in The Dark Knight without talking about Harvey Dent and how he becomes Two-Face.
Oh, yeah, totally. His story is like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah, it really is. It shows how even someone with the best intentions can get completely corrupted by trauma, you know.
Yeah, and despair, too.
Mm.
And it reminds you that good and evil aren't always so black and white.
No, they're not.
Even the most righteous person can be pushed too far.
Absolutely. The Dark Knight doesn't shy away from showing how much fighting crime can mess you up psychologically, you know?
Yeah, it takes a toll.
It's a reminder that being a hero often comes with a heavy personal price.
Yeah, for sure. And that brings us to the film's legacy. I mean, The Dark Knight didn't just entertain people, it had a major impact on the whole superhero genre.
It basically changed everything.
Yeah, it raised the bar for what superhero movies could be.
It proved that they could be dark and complex and thought-provoking, but still be huge box office hits.
Yeah, and I remember after The Dark Knight came out, there were so many other superhero movies that tried to capture that same gritty realism.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The Dark Knight ushered in this whole wave of superhero films that were more serious and explored more mature themes.
Yeah, but it wasn't just about being dark and gritty.
No. The Dark Knight also showed that superhero movies could be incredibly well made, like just from a filmmaking perspective.
Absolutely, the directing, the cinematography, the
Yeah.
performances, the score.
Yeah, everything works together so well.
It's like a symphony.
Yes, and that attention to detail and the artistry of the film is really what elevated it above just a typical comic book movie.
Yeah, and it demanded to be taken seriously as a piece of cinema.
Yeah,
Good.
it did, and I think that's why it continues to resonate with people even today.
Yeah, you can see its influence everywhere, not just in superhero movies, but in other genres too.
Definitely filmmakers were inspired by its storytelling, its character development, its visual style.
Yeah, and don't forget about the cultural impact. I mean,
Mhm.
The Dark Knight sparked so many conversations and debates.
Oh, yeah, totally. I remember people talking about it for months after it came out.
Yeah, it was a huge cultural event, and it's still relevant today.
For sure.
The themes of justice, corruption, heroism, they all still resonate in a world that sometimes feels as chaotic as Gotham City.
It's true. The Dark Knight showed us that even in the darkest times, there's still hope, you know?
Yeah.
And that even flawed people can make a difference.
Yeah, that's a really powerful message. So, as we reflect on The Dark Knight and its impact, what stands out to you the most?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
What aspects of the film do you think have had the most lasting influence?
I think for me, it's the way it blurred the lines between hero and villain. It showed that good and evil aren't always so clear-cut,
Yeah.
and that sometimes even the best intentions can have really bad consequences.
That's a really great point. And I think that's something that we as viewers are still grappling with today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the world is a complicated place. There are rarely easy answers.
Yeah, exactly. And The Dark Knight doesn't try to simplify things.
No, it embraces the complexity.
And by doing that, it created a film that is both entertaining and thought-provoking.
And that's what makes it a masterpiece.
Right.
It stays with you, it makes you think, and ultimately it leaves you with a sense of hope, even in the midst of all that darkness.
That's a perfect way to put it. The Dark Knight was a game changer, and its legacy continues to inspire and challenge us.
Absolutely well said. It's wild to think that people are still talking about this film all these years later.
It's true. Like, it still sparks debates and conversations, you know?
Yeah, what's it all mean? What are the big takeaways? I mean, it's a testament to how layered and complex the movie is that it doesn't give you easy answers.
It doesn't at all. It leaves you with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what makes it so thought-provoking. You walk away and you're still thinking about it.
I mean, take the ending, for example.
Mhm.
Batman takes the fall for Harvey Dent's crimes to protect Dent's image as this symbol of hope.
Right.
It raises so many questions about sacrifice, about leadership, about the compromises we sometimes have to make for the greater good.
Yeah, it's like the film is asking us, how far would you go to protect what you believe in?
Yeah, and at what cost? I mean, those are some heavy questions.
They are.
And I think they're questions that resonate with people on a really deep level.
They do, and I think that's why The Dark Knight has become such a touchstone in our culture.
Yeah, it's more than just a superhero movie.
Right.
It's a reflection of our own struggles with morality and justice and making choices in a world that's not always black and white.
Yeah. And it challenges us to confront the darkness not just in society, but within ourselves, too.
It's not an easy film to watch. It makes you face some uncomfortable truths
It does.
and wrestle with some really tough questions.
But, that's also what makes it so rewarding. It stays with you, it makes you think, and ultimately, I think it does leave you with a sense of hope, even though it's so dark.
I agree. It reminds us that even in the face of all the chaos and despair, there are people out there willing to fight for what's right, even if it means making huge sacrifices.
Yeah.
And that's a message that I think we all need to hear, especially today. So as we wrap up our deep dive into The Dark Knight, I want to leave you with this thought. What does this film mean to you? How has it shaped how you see the world? How has it changed your views on heroes and morality?
It's definitely a film that deserves to be revisited,
Oh yeah, for sure.
Every time you watch it, you can uncover new layers of meaning and insight.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure exploring the legacy of The Dark Knight with you.
Likewise.
And as always, thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch our next deep dive. See you next time.